If you're interested in understanding what one of the most profound sports scientists did to get his jumpers better, then you need to watch this video. What's up guys, my name's John Evans. I've helped some of the highest jumpers in the world jump even higher. Athletes like Isaiah Rivera, Donovan Hawkins, Tony Crosby, Dylan McCarthy, and the list goes on and on and on. The first thing that I want to cover is a common misconception that Yuri Verkhoshansky only used block periodization. Now you guys might not know this, but block periodization was popularized by the Russians, and it's the concept that you do one thing for an extended period of time, and that only one thing for an extended period of time, and then move on to a different quality. The idea behind this is that each quality has residual training effects, and these residual training effects allow you to build on top of the next quality that you're trying to improve. So for example, if you want to improve your power output, you would get your max strength up first. This allows you to increase the overall ceiling on the amount of force that you can produce, and the power work allows you to actualize that strength and produce force fast. This was actually popularized by a researcher known as Interned, who specifically worked with kayakers, but his research demonstrated that block periodization was very effective. Now, initially, Dr. Verkhoshansky started using block periodization. So his athletes would start by doing an extended period of just strength work. So for example, they might go in, do leg extension, leg press, calf raise, hamstring curls, etc., for an entire month, maybe 3 days a week, starting at 10 reps, working their way down to 5. Then in the next month, he would focus on absolute strength. So he might start with maybe 3 reps and work his way down to 1 in potentially the same exercises, and then move into power training. So in this cycle, he would do something like kettlebell jumps, power cleans, jump squats. After he developed power, he would then move into more elastic activities. So at this time, maybe he starts building in intensive plyos in the form of standing jumps, whether it was from double leg to single leg into the pit, or it was standing 3 hop where it's just double legs into the pit, and then eventually move into more reactive and faster, higher force plyometrics like alternate leg bounding or single leg hops, or maybe even hurdle hops or depth jumps. Real quick guys, if you're interested in coaching, go to THPStrength.com. Right now, you can purchase an annual plan that is exactly half of what you would pay if you did the month-to-month coaching. Eventually, Yuri realized that with elite athletes, they're quick to detrain as they are to train. So for example, if he had a world-class triple jumper, what he would find is that doing an entire month of high volume work, then max strength work, then power work, then elastic work would cause his athletes to detrain because they would only see that quality once every 4 months. As a result, they would lose the residual training effects that they developed in the previous cycles. This would inevitably make it very difficult for them to progress. As a result, later on in his career, he developed something called long conjugate sequence systems. Now you guys are familiar with this because we use the same exact method. And in this method, you develop all of the qualities, but in different amounts. So for example, in that early period where he was developing just volume in the weight room, he would also then bleed in very low volumes of plyometrics. We do something very similar, and it's funny because oftentimes the best practices all deviate towards the mean. In the following cycle, he would then move into more of a max strength emphasis, but he would still keep elements of volume and intensive or extensive plyos in his training. Following this, he would then move into power training, again, still keeping and bleeding in that max strength work, and then bleed in his plyometric intensive progressions later on in the cycle. Additionally, Yuri also did something very interesting, and that is that he mostly used 2-week periods to accumulate fatigue, and then moved into a period of transmutation where he would try to actualize the training adaptations that he developed in those first 2 initial weeks. In these periods, the intensity would increase dramatically. He oftentimes would have very low volumes of depth jumps. He would also have shock training bleed into his athletes' training program by increasing the intensity of the specific task that they're trying to get better at. So for example, if you're a high jumper and you need to increase your rate of force development eccentrically, he might bleed in at the beginning of the week something like 6x1 depth jumps from 30 or 60 centimeters, where the contact is very stiff and very reactive. And then later in the week, try to have the athlete actually use that in a jump session. So go out to the high jump apron, approach the bar very aggressively, take off and see, did the thing that we work on actually get better? And I want to be clear on this again. There is a common misconception that Yuri absolutely abused plyometric volume. In reality, he used very low volumes very sparingly because he understood that eccentric forces cause a massive amount of fatigue, and these athletes are very sensitive organisms. So if you push up the volume of very intense stimuli, it's going to cause them to get fatigued. The adaptations are going to move downward. They're not going to get better, and they're never going to be able to display the thing that truly makes them unique. He did this creatively simply by increasing specificity across the year. Now remember, specificity is how much does this exercise look like the desired outcome that you're trying to improve, whether it's in direction, force, rate of force development, which muscles we're using, what type of muscle contraction it is, the range of motion, whether it's double leg or single leg, how much does that resemble the activity that we're trying to get better at. So for example, if we look at 2-foot jumping, we know that we're taking something horizontally and converting it vertically upward. We're looking at massive eccentric forces, but also relatively longer ground contact times. We're using the hips, the quads, and the calves, and we're in an asymmetric bilateral takeoff. So how much do his exercises resemble those specific facets of a 2-foot jump? That said, you're probably gonna notice that there are a lot of similarities between what we do at THP and what Yuri did, and I don't think this is by chance, because I think if you're a really, really good coach and you always are checking the data and analyzing it, you're able to see what works and what doesn't work, and again, we're all gonna deviate towards the mean. We're all gonna work towards what actually works if we're really good practitioners. That said, that's the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.